night wherever you happen to be in the world, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another scene of Chronicles of Darkness, Vampire the Requiem. A Requiem for London. Another cloudy night settles on London as the mortals return to their homes, go to bed, kiss their loved ones good night, and go to sleep for the coming day. For Violet Delta, the day is just beginning. Having woken from a stiff and uncomfortable day sleep, she has had a remarkable night of hunting. The streets, the clubs, they are abundant with mortals. And after feasting on their blood, catching several leaving a club or walking down the street, jogging for a park, she finds herself in the rare situation where her beast is truly sated. For a time, of course. It never lasts. But for the next few hours, she is truly free from her beast's hunger and depredations. Unfortunately, she has a job to do. And she knows that her task for this evening is to catch up on some mortals, to investigate a matter that was assigned to her a few nights ago. A matter of some hospitalised mortals, some of which were even ghouls, connected to a hedge fund that a coterie of the Invictus ran. Violet, could you just roll me a quick intelligence investigation roll? This sort of represents your background research on this whole topic. The things you've done in the night to night, asking people a few questions.
What was the poll again?
Intelligence plus investigation. Basically just asking people a few questions, doing a bit of research, coordinating with other members of the Invictus to find information, looking through the archives and files that the Invictus have of one another. You have limited access to these things.
2 successes.
Okay. And over the night, you've been coordinating with the bagman, who is a difficult kindred to stay in touch with. Every time you receive calls from him on a different phone, a different device, different email address. And you learn from him, and by perusing fewer a few files presented to you by others of your profession of the Invictus, that the coterie that runs this hedge fund is a coterie known as the Firm. That's what they call themselves. True to their name, they're a coterie that runs a few businesses on behalf of the Invictus, mainly managing them rather than owning them directly, and they get a cut for their trouble. They are known to work directly for the Baron of Lambeth. And while they aren't particularly high up the food chain, they are a relevant asset to him. You know that Baron Folks, as he is referred to, is a big player, not just within the kindred scene, but within the financial scene of London. And given how big he is within the given how big London is within financially in the world economy, that makes him something of an international influence economically. So you know that there's a chain there. Hello?
Yep.
You know there's a link there between the coterie and Folks now. So you think this might be an indirect attack on the Baron himself?
Oh no, that is not good.
Regardless of whether or not it's intended, that's the reality. These firms belong, by and large, to Baron Folks, and the few that don't belong to him, well, if he so wanted, he could likely simply take away from this coterie.
Could I do a roll to see if there's any controversy currently surrounding Baron Folks?
You succeeded on the investigation check. So, I'll say there's no current controversy surrounding him, but he is very much referred to sort of not all that well liked by kindred of the city. He has a very mixed reception. He has a lot of clout within the Invictus specifically, but to groups like the Carthians and kindred with less temporal power and wealth in general, he's generally viewed quite poorly. Very much almost like a stereotypical business tycoon. They view him very much like the man that needs to be taken down a peg.
Is there any particular reason for that, or just because he's a well-off businessman that just doesn't treat lower people well?
He is known to be prudish, but he hasn't been overt in anything. There's no grand incident where he has treated some poorer kindred poorly or anything like that. It seems to be more just based on his bearing and his status as an Invictus, more so than anything else. He fits the bill for a very stereotypical wealthy Invictus, and that makes him something of a target.
Alright.
And so
Are
there's
there
quite a lot
any...
of tension there on both sides.
Is there anything I've heard from Foster?
We haven't heard anything back from Foster yet. But it's only been a few nights.
Alright, cool. So am I able to meet with Bagman to report this back to him, or do I just head to the hospital for more investigation?
You would be going to the hospital first, I think. It'd make more sense. You'd have more to report. And the information you have right now isn't likely to be really news to anybody.
Alrighty, cool beans to the hospital this time.
The place where the mortals have been hospitalised to is a hospital known as Guy's Hospital. It's in Lambeth. It's it is one of the tallest hospitals in the world. It's a the entrance is like a 4 to 5 story building, but the left side of it hosts a very two very large towers, which is actually referred to as the Tower Wing. Which is where you might find the models in question. You have been told explicitly what wards they're being kept at. So it's really just a case of you heading right there and finding a way in without necessarily alerting hospital staff. By the time you arrive, visiting hours have very much ended.
Of course.
So, how do you make your way through the halls of this hospital?
Remind me, does obfuscate work against cameras and tech?
It doesn't. That would require a specific devotion.
Alrighty, guess she's just gonna walk through in her usual work uniform and say she's a visiting professional. Like, she's likely got some kind of ability to talk to people there, I guess, unless I need a specific background though.
Let's check your backgrounds real quick.
Should probably work on building contacts.
They will want to check that. You do work at a pharmaceutical firm.
Yeah, she could probably be like dropping by to test, like to see the results of some study for a medication that the company's been trialing, honestly.
Of course, the visit is very unexpected.
Yeah.
And late at night. So, could you roll me a manipulation subterfuge?
Were my XP spends approved?
They have not been approved.
Ah, fuckery.
I haven't gone through them yet.
That's a fail.
Okay. So... the person greeting you, a nurse who doesn't really know who you are, and certainly wasn't expecting somebody from Chiron Group, is a little bit suspicious. It's very late at night, and she isn't aware of any trials taking place, even if they're occurring. It's just not in her pay grade. So she hits you with a barrage of questions. And calls her superiors. When she gets back to you, she simply says that in fact there was no visit expected tonight, although a visit can be arranged for tomorrow morning if you would like. She also asks for your name.
If I would ask if, quick question, would Vi have been able to, like, tell her superiors at the company she works for she has a condition that means she can't be exposed to sunlight? Or would that be too, like, risky of breaking the masquerade?
The weird thing is that it has actually happened in both Requiem and Masquerade before, where people have done that in law. It is sort of skirting the boundaries. Some think it's an effective way of keeping the masquerade, other people think it's not plausible. So it really...
I mean, there is a legitimate condition that that means that.
Yeah.
Alright, yeah, Vi will give her name as Dr. Violet Deltar and ask if the visit can possibly be arranged for during nocturnal hours, as she has a genetic condition that means she can't actually be exposed to sunlight without, like, severe risk of cancer.
Oof.
Because I don't know what the name is, but I do know it's a thing.
Okay, make me a manipulation plus persuasion check.
What was the roll again? Sorry.
Persuasion.
I'm spending a willpower on this because I have one whole dice. Two successes.
Two successes. Alright. So, your request sounds more than reasonable. And while it does sound a bit weird, it does explain why you did show up in the middle of the night. And so, yeah, they'll arrange a visit for tomorrow evening for you. Would you like to skip forward to that evening?
Yes, please.
Okay. And you'll be shown around the place. You'll be shown all the various facilities, the guy's hospital. It's not bad. Not to the same standard that Chiron Group has, but it's definitely up to task. You have to spend like an hour or so going through the motions of these people before you can actually get away from them. A lot of uncomfortable socializing and small talk.
Vi will also make sure to bring Tristan for this. After all, he is her research assistant.
Tristan has a much easier time with this than you do, and will speak for you in social situations. I'll actually have him roll to see how he does. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do at all. There we go. Okay, he succeeds. So with Tristan around, you don't have to do much talking. He speaks first for the most part. He keeps their attention. He convinces them that you can have a sort of look around, sort of guides the conversation so that you can check the machinery, sort of run through, check the results of the test. I'd like to spend a bit more time looking over this material before moving on, but he'd be happy to keep his lovely host's company, his guide's company, while you do so, and look over the rest of the facilities and the trials, enabling you to make a quick getaway to the wards where your targets are being kept.
Awesome.
So, you make your way up the lift, and it's a long, lonely lift ride. It's not called towering for anything.
Is Bagman gonna appear behind me?
Not quite. It's quite lonely at these hours. The night shift is in full effect, and there aren't as many staff on hand as there would be during the day. Under Obfuscate, it's quite easy to make your way past the staff at the reception desk for your level and make your way to the wards. Where these people are being held. Most of them are asleep. One is reading. Another is on his phone. They're all being kept in the private part of towering. And so this is all paid for. Out of their own pocket. It is not public.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, you can either talk to them or you can simply use all specs on them. Yep.
I'm gonna have a shower. Do you need a bathroom?
No.
She's just gonna use Auspex. She's probably at her limit with socializing, what with having anxiety.
Make me 3 rolls. You know that around half a dozen have been attacked and a few have even died. There's 3 of the victims here.
What do I roll? Sorry.
For Auspex, it is, I suppose, what level of Auspex are you using?
I have Auspex too.
I assume it would be 2. That would get you the most information. So for Auspex 2, Uncanny Perception, make me 3 checks. Intelligence plus Empathy plus Auspex. The first use of this ability is free. The next 2 cost 1 vitae each, so you lose 2 blood points from this.
Cool, I will denote that real quick before I make the roll. Three for 3.
Oh.
3 per success. 3 successes per roll.
Huh. Interesting. So you learn a few things. Which question? So you got 3 questions. What questions would you like to ask about them? You got 3 questions per person. We'll just say 3 questions count for all of them, for simplicity's sake. 2 appear to be middle-aged men that look pretty badly injured. They've got different injuries. One appears to have scar marks or burn marks running all the way up his body.
Was I given details previously about what happened specifically during their accidents?
Yeah, you know one suffered a car crash, and that one's the most obvious. His different parts of his body are in caskets. One side of his face has been bandaged. He is the one that is asleep. The man who has been scarred was electrocuted. Some freak accident. And he's busy reading a book. The other man, Indian-looking gentleman, had a sudden accident within his own home. The least of all the injuries. Broken arm and a leg, but nothing more severe than that. He's probably going to be the first to leave hospital. He's currently just listening to music on his phone.
For all the victims, would it help to ask specifically what happened during the accident, or should I ask other things?
You can ask whatever you like. These questions are your choice. I suppose it depends what information you believe you would need that would be likely to help you most quickly resolve it. You know, what is the information most pertinent to acquiring the truth?
That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Because you know the sort of accidents they had, but of course, what did that look like?
I guess, yeah, she'll ask that question for the accidents. What did they look like? What happened?
Okay. So you gaze upon each of them, get a vision of their accidents. Your beast reaches in to the imprints of their soul, to their mind, to peel back for layers. You see the first man, you see he's simply driving down a road somewhere in the inner city, you're not quite sure. But
Does it give any indication at all? Like, would this be in Carthy and Invictus territory?
it's not immediately obvious. You don't see a road sign, and while one can identify roads from their layout, London is a very intertwined and very large city. There's not any immediately recognizable landmarks that would indicate the street name of this place. But it would appear to be in the inner city. Like you can, this is definitely the city of London. Very tall buildings, very dense. This is definitely not the outer city. But he's driving down the road, and something very strange happens. He's driving down the road. It's almost as if the vehicle acquires a life of its own. It skids and brakes suddenly. The driving wheel swerves left into an oncoming vehicle, seemingly with no provocation whatsoever. The vision ends as you hear the screeching sounds of the emergency brake and the crumpling of car metal. For the second man, you simply see that he walks out of a building. Second, let me actually get it up for you. He appears to be walking out of the Scalpel. A significant landmark in the city of London. It's also known as 5254 Lime Street.
Oh, thank you for clarifying.
It's called the Scalpel very much because it's almost shaped like one. It's a skyscraper that's somewhat shaped like a knife, almost. He's walking out of it and he appears to be having an argument on his phone.
Is it clear whom that argument was with?
You don't recognise the name. He appears to be arguing with one of his colleagues. He would appear to be the boss. You hear him screaming at somebody on the other side of the phone. Not screaming, but yelling. About their lost revenue. You think he might be talking about the stocks they lost. He references the cyber attack. He says he wants their entire IT department put to the axe. It's as he's going on about this, and something happens to his phone. Something that is clearly not natural. As you see electricity emanate from the phone. Literal lightning, almost like raking claws. shoot out of the phone and rip into his torso and his neck, brutally maiming that entire part of his body as he seizes up. Shaking as the electricity tears into him and he falls to the ground.
I'm getting a feeling I do not like. Oh dear. And the third guy?
You see, you see your third mark, your third target, third victim, perhaps more appropriately, walking through his own home. You see him heading out from his apartment. Fairly well-to-do. Man's clearly quite wealthy. It's a multi-bedroom apartment. You see him get into the lift. Presses a button to go down to the bottom floor. Lift starts heading down, and when once it reaches the ground floor, it opens and he begins to walk out. But something strange happens with the lift door, and it slams shut as he's walking out, catching his right leg and his wrist as he goes out. Causing a very nasty external fracture in both limbs, and he collapses to the ground and starts screaming from the pain.
I have a couple of questions because I want to make sure I don't meta this, but in this game, is there a form of blood magic that can be used simply like technomancy and like Masquerade?
The power could theoretically exist. Kindred are capable of many things. You are a member of a bloodline, so you know that bloodlines can perform many different feats. You know that sorcery can perform many different feats. Sometimes it affects people directly, sometimes it's very occult, esoteric, almost medieval in its styling. Sometimes it's more technomantic, although it generally trends towards the mythological. But kindred gutter sorcerers and technomancers are known to exist.
Alrighty. Another question. Let me get my thoughts together real quick. Vi would at least know that there are sects of kindred that's involved with blood magic like the Crone, right?
Both the Crone and the Sanctified practice blood sorcery, but they trend very heavily towards the mythological. They can engage in technomantic blood sorcery, at least you theorize. Blood sorcery is capable of so much that it wouldn't make sense to say it's impossible, but it is uncommon to say the least. You've certainly never seen it in your lifetime. You've been around for over 2 decades now. You know, you imagine if it was commonplace or if it was possible, you would have seen it.
Alright, and third question. The Queen would know about this because her husband is an Invictus, right? She'd have access to all the information I guess Violet had access to? Or would that be not something shared with the Queen, despite the fact that she is the Queen because she's a member of the Crown rather than the Invictus?
You know the Queen is a renowned blood sorcerer. If something is possible or impossible blood sorcerer, she would know. Whether or not she knows about these events is a completely different question. It's possible that they do know, and that they're the ones who ordered the investigation. It's also possible that either your sire or the one of the sheriffs ordered the investigation, and that they did not wish to trouble the king and queen with a matter they deemed to be below their station.
All right. Let me think for another minute. I guess Vi would take that into account for what she knows about the visions before asking if any of the victims knew about the stocks being sold too early and not being given any value for it before they were sold. Like, there was any indication that something was wrong with their IT departments or that there was sketchy going-ons in the office. Sorry, just checking. I did actually press my button, right?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, I was just pausing because I had a brain lapse again. Sad face. Oh,
good.
So, what you see in relation to that question? Let's see if he reaches out once more. As it tries to peel back the layers of their mind to yank a secret from their soul in relation to what you seek, but it cannot find anything. If there was any foul play, and you know there was, these mortals certainly aren't aware of it.
In relation to that, was there any indication it was done from inside the company, or just, like, from the research that Violet's done and the indications from these people, not for a separate question, but sort of, I guess, in tandem from what she's able to figure out, was it inside the company or all an outside job? Like, did the IP addresses lead outside?
You see a vision of them checking their or checking with their IT department. At least one of them. Investigating this security breach. As it's clear that these mortals know that there was something wrong, we just don't know what. But the IT department comes up blank. They don't know. There's nothing. An unauthorized transaction took place, but it appeared to be authorized at the time, of a lot of sales happening below value to various smaller businesses. But they don't have an answer for their superiors, and that infuriates. You think that might be the source of the angry phone call. It appears it was definitely an outside job, in the sense that they have no, the IT department had no footage, as they sort of explain to their superiors, like, this is what we found. They're explaining that there isn't anything. Even the beast is sort of, it's almost represented symbolically as they speak. It's like there's a void in their mouth as they speak. There's just nothing there. They're speaking nonsense. Nothing. There is nothing of value.
I guess for the third question, it'll just be simply, did reports into any of these incidents reveal any new information that she wouldn't have known yet?
That question. These questions have to be in relation to the mortals, so it can't be in relation to the incident.
Okay, thanks. Then she'll just leave it there, go and retrieve Tristan, and exit the hospital.
Okay. You're not gone for too long. These visions happen quickly. I think they happen within the span of a turn.
And with that, she is going to attempt to organize a meeting with the Queen. Because she needs answers.
Who do you contact to get in contact with the Queen? The Queen is not an easy person to arrange a meeting with.
Who would she be able to contact who would be able to get her a meeting with the Queen?
The only person you know really would be your sire. And of course you'd have to convince your sire to let you.
Alright then, Vi will send Tristan with a paper report of everything she's learned so far, with a letter being, this is why I need to see the Queen. I have some suspicions about relating to these incidents that I need a specific question asked from her about. Answered, sorry. Literally, the letter is just unless you know any other blood sorcerers who you might be able to convince to help. Because she has some questions and theories. Though she uses the term people who can mess with things from afar. Very specifically that term. She's also going to do some general model research, I think, on whether, I guess, tech systems like cars and phones can be affected physically and physically made to malfunction basically from a distance. Do I need to roll for that?
Yeah, roll roll for the deets.
And 2 successes.
Okay. What specifically were you rolling for again?
Intelligence investigation. This is for discovering if tech can be made to physically malfunction from a distance using either a basically a hacker sort of method, I guess. So she'd be searching papers, searching the internet for all that sort of information to see if there was any way that the devices could have been made to malfunction from a distance, or if this is some bullshit.
So, you know, most of the devices could be made to malfunction from a distance mundanely, just not in the fashion that you've seen. The phone in particular. Phones don't do that. Phones don't shoot force lightning at people. That's just not possible.
This a very specific question, but you remember that thing a couple of years ago when one of those the Samsung release started started literally catching on fire in people's hands?
Mm-hmm.
She would kind of I guess look into that, like the model of the phone, and see if there was any correlation between that sort of thing and what happened. Like if there were any major recalls, basically, that were like, this is a huge safety issue that needs to be recalled immediately.
You look, but you don't find any controversy or major recall for the model of phone that was being used.
Alright, then heck it, we're gonna go for the big guns and attempt to talk to the Queen. Vi is gonna send a letter to her sire with all of this and just be, I need to ask some very specific questions that only a blood sorcerer or someone who can simply mess with things beyond the physical that needs to be answered. She's like also going to list very carefully that she's going to ask some very general questions of the Queen and keep it as vague as she can so as order not to infer any debt. Like, this is literally just a couple of, could this potentially be a thing? Or could this be something that one of your sect could do before she sort of reports back to her sire with what she's learned? Or even if her sire has any of that knowledge, I guess.
So, you reach out to yourself the information you have. The next night you receive a message from her. She directs you to a kindred called Hermione Level. The letter says, "To my child, the information you have uncovered is indeed disturbing, and it troubles me. What you have described as being on display is not only a risk to the masquerade, but is also possessed only by our few kindred. And even I do not have the expertise to know what all of them might be, and what they might be capable of. As such, I have directed you to the Blood Scholar Hermione Level. She should be able to inform you of what you seek. The appropriate transactions for the information have already taken place."
Alright, Vi will take Tristan and go...
You are then given an address and a time.
Alright, Vi will take Tristan and go to the arranged meeting place. Actually, no, she'll go on her own tonight. Tristan's probably more used for more mortal situations, because Vi knows she sucks at those. Or, like, I guess big scale events, you know.
So, you head to Hackney Central Library. It's fairly large library in the center of Hackney. When you start pondering around The receptionist notices you and asks if they can help you in any way.
Vi asks if there is a Hermione working here.
I could look up such a person for you. May I ask what you need them for?
My mother sent me to speak to her old friends, you see.
I see. And may I have your name, please?
Violet.
Okay. I'll be just a moment, Miss Violet.
Vi will give a nod.
She will get on the phone and begin typing in a number. She'll phone up right in front of you. Yes, Miss Lovell, her daughter is here. Yes, I'll show her around. Of course, I'll be with you right in a moment. She'll put down the phone. Well, I can take you right to her, if you wouldn't mind.
I would greatly appreciate that, thank you.
The rather old woman, she looks like she's in her mid-50s. Escorts you down the library to a sealed off section of it. The library itself looks relatively mundane. It's only when you get to the staff-only section that things start to look a bit more esoteric. The shelves are still sort of bright beige, but the books begin to look rather old. Some look quite worn, others look outright supernatural, with odd spines and covers. Some even look like they're made out of something other than paper.
Don't like that. Actually, can I make an intelligence medicine roll or something like that to see if it's something I recognize?
You don't need to. You can smell the vitae here. Some books have definitely been written in blood. A few are clearly made of skin, tanned to resemble leather.
Slight concern there, Chris.
Others are simply medieval, like they're made of a like they were very much made over 1,000 years ago.
That is impressive. Is there a person visibly in here, or?
There is. As you walk down this forbidden section of the library, sealed off to be a staff-only section. you see this woman. Let me grab the what you see channel for you. Oh, you've already beaten me to it. There we go. She's a tall woman in her early 30s with long black hair, pale skin, a black pea coat.
So similar looking to Violet, actually. Except Vi has like these vibrant blue eyes. Blue eye.
She has a small pendant around her neck, and furry sort of sort of small trim of fur on the sleeves and collar of her little peacoat.
Vi approaches her and says, "Good evening."
Evening. You are Miss Violet, yes?
Dr. Violet. Vi gives a little bit of a smile at that.
Dr. Violet, yes. I hope you find my collection to your liking.
This is certainly quite fascinating. Not anything I have seen before.
I've spent a great deal of time hunting down these little pamphlets. It's not easy getting a collection quite this large.
I can imagine they would have not been easy to acquire.
There's a lot of competition in London.
Vi gives a nod, like she has a little bit of historical knowledge, I guess. I am unsure on what you have been told. Would you mind updating me?
I've been paid a boon to assist you in your investigation. I've been told you have some very obscure pieces of information to give me.
Vi gives a nod.
I'm supposed to present you with an answer.
Vi gives a nod, and she'll hand over the same paper report to this woman with like a few of the details obscured. Like, obviously the stuff about the Invictus she can't share, but the basically just a report of the incidents, what happened, and Violet's theory on that there might have been magical interference used, and she's not sure where it might have come from or what might have happened. So she's leaving this to the eyes of like a skilled thaumaturge, because she is not getting herself involved in that. No, thank you.
fair. Do you give her the information that you found?
Yes, on the incidents.
Hermione looks somewhat confused. She doesn't appear to immediately know what you're talking about.
Vi doesn't know in-game pretty much anything about thaumaturgy. What she would suspect is that there's some artificial method Kindred are using, whether that be discipline or something else.
As a note, just for clarity moving forward, it's not called thaumaturgy. You've got two different kinds of blood sorcery. One is Theban sorcery, which is used by the Sanctified, and the other is Kurak, which is used by the Crone.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Essentially, the report has a detailed description of what happened with each incident, and Violet's notes between the three basically being she suspects some kind of foreign use of perhaps rumors of blood sorcery or something else akin to disciplines that Kindred use, interfering with these devices and essentially causing malicious harm and causing a potential masquerade break and a lot of problems for Kindred. Like, it's very scientific, very detailed, not including any of the results of, like, the true thing behind the Invictus, like, obviously, because she knows she's not supposed to tell anyone about that as much as possible. But more of a, I guess, study of the incidents and a layout for a skilled thaumaturge to be able to look over and see if there's any, like, ideas they have, if that makes sense.
Your host navel gazes for a moment. Technology of sorcery isn't specifically my field. This is unusual to say the least. I'm almost hesitant to call it sorcery. If it were, the magic would almost certainly be improvised. Let me check a few things for you. She begins walking over to a section of the library. She takes out a couple of books, one quite old looking, like it was made a couple of 100 years ago. The other a lot more modern. She opens them and they appear to be tomes on blood sorcery. One is definitely written in hand. Or was, well...
if I would show some respect to her and not really follow her, she'd kind of sit down and wait for her to return. Because she knows that, like, secrets of Kindred are well guarded and probably doesn't want to intrude on the woman's space.
She reads through both books quite quickly. She seems to know them like the back of her hand. But she closes them both and she doesn't look satisfied, as if she doesn't have an answer. You hear her mumbling her to herself. Lightning curses. The lift could have been misfortune. The curse is some description, but that wouldn't explain the phone. Not a car. The car would have to have been a separate ritual. But then that wouldn't be the phone either. This wouldn't apply to the car, it's too modern. Hermione actually looks up at you. Can you tell me what make the car was?
I presume Vi looked into it before it happened. Like, she would have been able to draw some basic details about the person because she'd been given so much information.
Very modern car, and actually, something you're aware of is that part of the car uses it's not entirely mechanical. It is part digital. Some cars actually, for their engines, use computers.
Yeah, Vi would report the make and model then. She'd also say that she hadn't actually looked at the vehicle yet, as she'd in person after the accident had occurred.
Maybe it is not sorcery. One moment. She's going to close the books and lock them up again. They literally have a lock on them. And is going to return with a with what appears to be a almost like a few dozen A4 sheets of paper that have been stapled together and typed on. It's almost like it's like a booklet, but it doesn't have a cover or a back or a spine or anything. It's incomplete.
Mm-hmm.
The front page is a title page called Secrets of the Blood, and the author is Hermione Lovell.
Vi kind of sits still, like with her arms crossed on the table, and just watches her.
Yeah. While she was gone, the old woman just sort of looks over you rather sweetly. Just gives you a pleasant smile.
Vi gives her the kind of smile that would usually be reserved for, like, I guess, her family, sort of. Like, when she wants to, she can kind of put up a front.
Hermione comes back with this booklet, this collection of papers, and begins looking through them. Whomever did this must be a modern thinking kindred. I'm thinking perhaps it's not sorcery, but a recent branch, as he sort of turns the pages.
I did pass several papers and information to see if this was the result of technological work, but I did not find anything that indicated that it could be messed with so strongly. That was why my mind turned to discipline use and similar aspects.
From what you have told me, it is certainly not natural. Let's see.
I do not believe even when technology malfunctions by accident, it causes such harm.
She continues turning through the pages until she finally stops on one. Here we go. Let's see, so there is the chained. I know of this bloodline. They're relatively recent. They're more social engineers, but a few have shown the capacity to interact with technology from a distance. Still, I don't think they'd be capable of something this direct, this visceral.
Add a game question real quick. Bloodlines in Requiem still developing?
In Requiem, bloodlines are branches of a clan. Some are very old, some are quite new. Bloodlines develop at their own pace. There are bloodlines that have been developed as early as just a few decades ago, and there are some that are still active that are as ancient as Mesopotamia.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. I appreciate it.
To sort of give you an out-of-character explanation, all that's really required for a bloodline to form is for an elder to break away from their clan and do something to themselves or to their blood that renders them sufficiently different. And then the power to embrace that, the power to sort of pass it on down the line. If you have blood potency, mechanically, if you have blood potency 6, you have the power to start your own bloodline.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
There are some exceptions to this. Sometimes things just happen to a kindred and it ends up passing on, but these are generally not of the kindred's will, or if they are involve third parties that do something to them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yes. The links deal more with the networks. They can interact with technology, but not like this. They deal more with connections between things. No,
If I would just kind of wait for her to clarify what she means.
Sorry. The links are a bloodline of the Maquette clan. They are a recent strain of the blood.
Might I ask if they were evolved from another bloodline, or something that came from the main blood of the clan?
No. Their founder is well known due to the recency of the bloodline's history. A man called Martin Thomas. They're a bloodline of the Invictus. They are sometimes known as the Spiders, or the Operators. From my studies of them and their blood, they have power over the connections between things, networks, relationships. They have power to follow these connections. I believe they refer to the linchpins of these connections as nodes. For example, you and I are a node, and the link between us is the connection. They don't necessarily deal in technological connections as much as they deal in metaphysical ones, but they can deal in both, and have power over both. They can even manipulate the power of these connections to absorb information or even power from it, and can manipulate their own place within it, such that if they so wanted, they could manipulate their relationship to you so that you would perceive them as your oldest friend, or your relationship to me as your most hated enemy. In some ways it is not too dissimilar to Majesty, but their power goes beyond that. Some of them have recently developed the power to interact directly with technology, but and that is where the bloodline, where the founders' fascination of networks began, but I do not believe this is them. No, this must be another. There must be another. There is a pattern here. I intend to find it. It follows the pattern of a series of abilities, not that of sorcery.
Could we pause for a second just so I can think about this? Sorry, I'm keeping up. I'm just also mind is going all over the place.
Oh, as
A very specific question. When it comes to this, I guess this is kind of a mechanics related question, but when it comes to disciplines and this sort of thing, are they, I guess, able to manipulate things based on creative wording like it would be in Changeling, or does I guess their ability is very specifically aligned within mechanics rules and not able to do that?
From what you've been told, doesn't appear the links play with wording, rather that they play with the metaphysical connections between things. They deal with the concept of networks. It's very abstract.
Okay, I think I understand.
So they could, in theory, mess with computer networks. They could also mess with the networks between people, their relationships. Same thing, different name. As an aside,
Alright, thank you.
This is the symbol printed onto the book. The symbol of their blood. Let me just find it for you.
Thank you for being so patient with all my questions, by the way.
That's fine. That is what you see. It looks like the Invictus symbol, but rather than the skull and the laurel being in the middle, there is simply a web with two eyes at the center, staring outward. That would appear to be their bloodline symbol, their marker.
That's interesting. Alright, Vi will kind of let this woman continue. So, any theories on what it might be, then?
The Lynx have acquired an enemy in recent nights. Not too dissimilar to themselves, but more specialized in the physical. One second. She begins turning the pages again.
Fi kind of gives an understanding nod, like, quite clearly she's a scientist, you know what it's like to get into the, problem-solving mode.
She begins turning the pages again. And this time sells on the immediate page right after it. The first thing you notice is the symbol. The symbol is very different from the symbol of the Lynx. I'm actually going to show you what it is. It is a square with a circle made up of dashes. Within that circle is another circle with a grid. Within that grid, there certain squares are coloured to resemble the shape of an eye and its pupil looking outwards. It is a very technical looking symbol. And it looks quite modular would be the word. It certainly doesn't look old or medieval at all. I'm just going to put it up for you. This is what it looks like. You note that the page on this bloodline is largely blank, or rather it's much shorter than the Lynx, but it does have some excerpts and some description on it, describing the bloodline and their basic abilities. It appears to be much more technical than some of the other writings of various other bloodlines in this book. These, I believe, have come to be the Lynx's main rival within the modern spheres of technology. They call themselves the Connected. I cannot tell when they first emerged, but I do know they are very recent.
Any theories on how recent?
The Lynx only emerged a few decades ago around the formation of the internet. The Connected are likely even more recent than that. Their founder is definitely not very old. Or, if they are, then their child or not. They are young blood. And it is shown in how they display themselves, this symbol. It is, well, it makes use of modern technological symbology. The eye is not too different. Is not too dissimilar from how the eye is applied with the links. And personally, I believe, and all evidence I have gathered suggests, that they are of the maquette, which would also explain why they are rivals to the links. They could be rival bloodlines. I do not know much about the connected. I have not had the opportunity to meet many, and most are very cagey. They do not like to be found in general. They prefer to sit on the other end of a computer screen. They do not have the same social graces that the links do, but they seem to have a firmer grasp over modern technology than them. I suppose in some ways it is not too different as to alternate methods of hacking, whereas the links may be social engineers. The connected are more conventional hackers. The links trick the mortal system, perhaps the connected trick the technical system. I am aware that the connected do have power over technology. To what extent I'm not sure, but from what I have seen, aspects of it are similar to animalism.
As the blood scholar talks, Vi will take notes. This is incredibly useful.
I believe it is the connected who may be your true culprit. From what you have told me, I believe only a connected could have done what you have seen. To pull off such a cyber attack while leaving no leads behind. It would only be possible if one could control digital technology supernaturally.
I greatly appreciate your contribution.
Be careful. The connected are well informed, and in a city is, well, in a city with as much surveillance as London, they're about as well connected as they could possibly hope to be.
Vi gives a nod, like she's clearly taken that information in, and she will gather up her notes and thank Holly before she leaves.
Hermione, not Holly, how dare you?
Hermione, sorry.
The Tremere is trying to usurp my place, how dare.
Listen, you put a bloodthorn surge in front of me with the H name.
Udderswall's a nice name. But, she says that's quite alright. I hope this information has been of value to you.
Well, so, I greatly appreciate it. You are quite well skilled. Vi will also leave Vi will also, I guess, leave a business card for her own work and kind of give her a note. Just she's a mortal scientist. If Hermione needs any help with any research, she can most likely assist in payment. Like, not really an official way to pay her, like, with a boon. It's just more of a unofficial thank you. Your information has been incredibly useful. Just to be polite.
Yeah. Of course, you could also ask about the Queen while you were here. Given that you wanted to investigate her past.
Alright, Vi kind of... Before she leaves, she gives a moment of thought over her notes before she says... Kind of asks... By the way, would you happen to know anything about the past of, Queen Morgan?
She blinks.
I have not been very involved in Kindred Society, you see, and I would, appreciate learning about the, cultural history of our city.
The Queen, as most elders, are quite withdrawn on matters pertaining to their past. I could seek out information for you. I am an expert on the lineages of the United Kingdom and the various bloodlines that have inhabited and come and gone from the country.
I would greatly appreciate that.
Of course, I'm not sure the Queen would be best pleased that I would simply be delivering such knowledge to just anybody. I would require some manner of payment.
What would you ask?
A single major boon of you.
Vi kind of pauses and says, let me give it some thought, if you would not mind. After all, I am not looking for anything too specific, more a history of the city and its inhabitants.
That I could provide for significantly less prestation. If it is the city you wish for the history of, then I would be happy to provide that for simply a minor boon. Such esoterica is substantially less harmful to my well-being.
Vi would agree. Again, leaves her business card with a few details saying simply, if I can help you in return for this, I will. Because she isn't actually looking for anything suspicious or anything like that. She is merely curious about the Queen's past and, the past of the city in relation to that. Does that make sense?
Oh yes, fine. Hermione says, I would be happy to accept that arrangement. I will acquire you one of my tomes. I hope that it shall inform you as to the true history of London, at least.
Certainly, I am sure you are well aware that I am a newer addition to Kindred Society and have not yet had the chance to interact with the city and its history for the most part. I only really entered society just before the end of the last war.
Well then, I would be glad to get you acquainted. she says as she heads over to another section of the library, pulling out another book. This is an older looking book, simply titled The History of London. Or rather, The True History of London is what it says.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When you open, she'll open up the cover page, and on the first page is simply, it's penned by Hermione Level, but has noted contributions from many kindred.
Nice.
This should get you up to speed. It does not contain any information that is incriminating per se, although it does possess a few truths that perhaps certain societies would consider uncomfortable.
I will ensure to take good care of it.
You may possess this book as soak in whatever insight you can gain for it for 1 lunar month. After that point of time has passed, I expect it to be returned to me.
Certainly. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you. And do not let anyone know you possess this book.
Fi will give a nod. She, very clearly understands it, and she takes the book very carefully.
Thank you.
Thank you. I am greatly appreciative of the effort that you've put in today. And with that, Vi will head back to her haven to do a studying on the book.
Okay. And I think with that, we can end our scene there.
Oh, before I forget, she will also send a paper report with everything that Hermione reported to her sire.
And to Bagman.
I would, except Bagman can't be fucking found.
He's given you the means to reach him.
You hadn't told me that earlier.
I told you, it's not an easy man to find, but whenever he contacts, it's like with a different email of a different phone, but it's not like all you have to do is respond to that phone and then he'll contact you again at a later date of a different phone, but you can't respond to it initially.
Okay, yeah,
he's the one contacting you.
She'll send a note to, she'll send the actual report to her sire via Tristan on paper, and then she'll send a note to Bagman that simply says, I found all the information I think we need to crack the case. Pretty much just come find me. Because she's not stupid enough to send that over the phone.
You will not initially get a response from the Bagman as well. He likes to take his time. But eventually you will get a thumbs up. And I think with that, we'll end our scene there. Thank you players for playing, or player for playing. Thank you watchers for watching. We'll see you all next time. Bye bye.